everyone. Hope you're enjoying the day so far with all these insightful sessions. It's a pleasure for me to moderate this panel. We're going to talk about fundraising as one of the fundamental drivers of growth for startups and how investors play a key role in supporting entrepreneurs as they scale. So today we will discuss, together with Javier, Josep, and Rob, their own fundraising experience with Wallapop and how their relationship matured as the company transitioned from early to growth phase. So before we start, and I'll give the word to our speakers so they can introduce themselves, I'll briefly introduce myself. I'm Lucía Hojman. I'm a former Endeavor employee, and I've been working with high-growth companies both in Spain and LATAM for the past 10 years. And last year, I joined BBVA Spark to support its launch in the markets where we are and business development in Spain. So now let's move back to our speakers. Rob, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about your background at eBay and current role in Wallapop.
Great. So my name is Rob Cassedy. First, thanks for having me here. It's great to be here. So my name is Rob Cassedy. I've been the CEO of Wallapop for nearly the last 5 years, so about half of the life of Wallapop. Before that was with eBay for 12 years, starting in the US, was in London, and then in Germany, working on all things marketplaces and specifically focused on the peer-to-peer side. So it's been an amazing ride, and looking forward to a great conversation.
Thanks, Rob. And by the way, congrats on Wallapop's 10-year anniversary and on Viva Tech soon next Unicorn Award.
Thank you.
So, Josep, let's move to you. You've been in the VC world for quite a long time, in Antai, Neco, and currently at Corelia Capital. So why did you decide to join Corelia Capital, and which is its investment thesis?
Well, thanks. It's great to be here, and great to be here in this panel. So we at Corelia Capital, we are a growth fund. I know growth these days has probably a connotation that is what's happening there, but we'll try to explain it. So we are growth focused. So basically, we try to help companies to this transition when they move out from being startup to become potentially unicorns or decathlons. Corelia Capital has 3 different vehicles. It's been going on since 2016 in 3 different types of funds. The first one, which is fully deployed, we have several companies that the audience may know, Bold, Globo in Spain, and some others. Then a vehicle that we're very proud to manage for Neighbor. We will talk about it, whose main anchor and driving force for why Corelia has such a strong USP. And then the third one, which is a fund that we've done the first closing. We aiming to raise 300 million. So far we got 240, and hopefully we're going to get the closing towards year end. Our basic USP is very sector agnostic, growth, meaning tickets of 10 and up, and with a very, very strong hands-on approach, high conviction, and with this partnership that we have with our anchor and a strong relationship to work with the companies with this Korea, Japan, and Europe footprint that we are very, very proud to service and provide to some of our companies.
Great, thanks. And Javier, last but definitely not least, you've been an active investor for the past 20 years with portfolio companies such as Globo, Gigas, PAC, Signaturit, and of course, Wallapop. So at which stage does Bonsai invest?
So basically, first, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure. So yeah, we've been active for the last 20 years, so even more. We started 2001 with the first investments here in Barcelona, by the way, through Grupo Intercom with companies like Infojobs, Softonic, or Bodas.net. So concentrated on all the classified revolution. So basically, we invest in early stage companies around A series, though we also combine with secondary option for companies in the C's and further on stages. And yeah, I mean, it's 10 years now since I first met Wallapop. I think it was love at first sight, and all in all, a great experience.
Yeah, now we're going to talk definitely more about that. So I want to thank you, the three of you, for being here today. It's amazing to know that you know each other from such a long time, and I'm sure we could be speaking for hours. But for the sake of time, I'll jump directly into the objective of today's panel. So Rob, I'll start with you. Tell us about a brief summary on the fundraising track record of Wallapop. How many rounds did the company had, and how key was this investment in order to support the company's growth?
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, obviously every round is key. We just were able to close our Series G in January with the strong support from Corellia and Naver. And you know, thinking back across all of these rounds and all of the investors that we've been, I would say as a company, really fortunate to be able to bring in you know, amazing investors and the right investors at every stage. But I think picking the right investors for at the right time is really critical and was very important for Wallapop. So at the very beginning, during the seed rounds and that, you know, pre-seed, getting investors like Javier, who basically knows how to, you know, helping get the company started, how to, and really assisting almost on a day-to-day basis with getting the company moving towards more like mid-stage investors like Excel, or, you know, still early but a little bit later, who are, you know, then helping with the next level of professionalization with the company, to even, you know, now our last two rounds again have been led by Corellia and Naver, where, you know, we're at a different phase, and then it's really about how do we unlock the technology from Naver and helping us, you know, into the next 5 to 10 years. So it's really, for me, the most important thing in you know, G implies a lot of rounds. Maybe we're going to need to find a new alphabet after at the way things are going. I certainly hope not. But I would say each phase and each round has been about not just about how do we get the money that we need and the investment that we need to you know, continue our growth trajectory, but probably more importantly, how do we make sure we bring in the right partners to help us and bring skills and knowledge that we need into the company.
So Series G is like more than 6 rounds, over 250 million in total investment so far. I think that's impressive. So Javier, we just talked. You've been one of the first investors of Wallapop. I think you invested like 3 months later the company was born. So what have you seen tested in Wallapop that made you bet for the company in those early days?
So it was funny, but my friend Gerard Livet called me like 10 years ago and told me that they had like a type of prototype for marketplace. So I had been involved before in, as I said, in Idealista, in InfoJobs, in some of the other relevant marketplaces, and I knew that Mil Anuncios was a big brand here in Spain, so I was a little bit skeptical at the first sight. But then, so I downloaded the app, and I took some photographs of my motorbike in the street. 5 minutes after the call, I forget about all of that, so I was having dinner with my wife at home, and suddenly I saw my mobile sending leads of buyers. And I can tell you that the price was a market price. So certainly I noticed that these guys had created traction, which is something very, very difficult to create in the first stages. And it was something to do with the mobile revolution, geolocalizing all the inventory, and also what was going on with Facebook ads, just at that time. So I had this light. I came to Barcelona, and I think in 5 days after, I was invested. So I saw a lot of traction, and I saw lots of different elements that were together in that company, in that opportunity, in that moment of time.
So I'll move like into chronological order. So I will go back to Rob, and then I promise Josep it will be your turn. So Rob, You joined the company in 2018 as a professional CEO. We just learned from Javier that testing the product or service of any company is key to bet for it. So why did you decide to join Wallapop in 2018? And which was the main challenge ahead of you?
So I mentioned that I spent a bunch of time at eBay kind of developing this love for, I would say, purpose-driven and especially C2C marketplaces. And I had known of Wallapop back since it was founded in 2013. Obviously a fantastic story. And having spent that time at eBay and knowing and learning kind of what works, what doesn't work, but also seeing areas where maybe we could have done things differently or pushing more around that peer-to-peer and seeing the true power that we had to actually not only build great businesses, but actually affect good social change. I saw in Wallapop this opportunity, this amazing brand, so one of the most known, and not just known, but loved brands in Spain, incredible user base, and it didn't have legacy baggage. Mm-hmm. So at that time, there was like this idea of this is how you have to build business, the classifieds type businesses. And once you go down that path, it's very hard to turn it. And so Wallapop was a bit of this kind of unpolished diamond, from a brand perspective, from a user traction perspective, and also from the future was still open. And so it felt like this amazing opportunity to come and be part of kind of writing the next chapter, mm-hmm. And doing it in a way that hadn't been done before. And it's been a fun ride.
And which was that next chapter that you were building in Wallapop when you joined?
Yeah, so I'd say the next chapter was really both extending the reach of the company, but also finding the right business model. So first, I would say, talking about and these two things fit hand in hand. When I joined, Wallapop was almost entirely local, which works really well if you're in a big city. It works really well if you like to trade face-to-face, and it works really well if you have time. But if you're not in a big city where there's inventory density, if you don't want to trade face-to-face because of security or whatever reasons, and maybe you're more convenience-oriented, Wallapop didn't work so well. So we launched Wallapop Envios, which was bringing on these integrated payments and shipping options. So all of a sudden now you could still trade on Wallapop with your neighbor, but you could also trade with people in Sevilla or in Madrid or wherever. And this opened the door to a lot more trade. And so for me, I'm a huge vinyl, so record enthusiast. And often when you're looking for vintage records, you're not always going to find them in your neighborhood. But Wallapop is a great place for things like vintage records, and this is where bringing on Wallapop Envios helped me start to search the entire country for these things. And then, so we were meeting these customer needs, and the next was kind of how do we align that with our business model? And I think when I joined Wallapop, we had very clear product market fit. So it was obvious that we were, as Javier said, it was obvious we were onto something. There was a lot of traction in terms of meeting customer needs, but we didn't necessarily have a product business model fit. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the way things were at that time in this traditional model was actually not a fit to Wallapop. So the traditional classifieds model is basically you get a little bit of traction in your buy and sell category, and then you build a gigantic sales force and make all of your money in what are called the hero categories, so cars and real estate. But Wallapop actually, and this is kind of why I came, could be so much more in terms of building something truly valuable for customers even on the buy and sell categories. And so we were able to use this Wallapop Envios to actually bridge that gap between the customer, the product, and the business model. So ultimately pivoting our business model into something a bit new. No one had done this before in terms of taking what was predominantly a local and horizontal classifieds model and actually layering on this kind of value-added shipping services while still letting people trade how they want to, whether that's locally or across Spain.
I think this is a great learning experience, right? It's all about fitting the right business model into a company and not forcing a company into a business model.
Exactly.
So Josep, now it's your turn. So you also have like quite a long history with Wallapop. Tell us briefly about how far behind do you know the company? And then why did you decide to invest with Corelia both in 2021 and follow on in 2023?
So many reasons, but from the very simple one of we believe that Spain has had an amazing ecosystem that, in terms of valuation, from being a pan-European fund, is extraordinary opportunities. Wallapop, 50% of the Spanish population goes through Wallapop in a monthly basis. When you look at the numbers, and I'm not going to borrow the audience with the KPIs and all these things, but when you look at the GMV numbers and everything that Wallapop had when we start having long hours conversations with Rob, who I met, introduced by Agus, and very quickly, that was 5 years of Wallapop, moving from building an amazing structure, brand, user engagement, a lot of things. But then, for us, that we were going to invest quite a bit more money than on the previous rounds, and the stage and the due diligence and the process, for us, what was super important, and is always very important in our investment thesis, is to find this leadership, this vision. And Rob has mentioned a lot of the things going from local to transversal, transactional, and so many more things that we can discuss. We have, but that we felt and think, and as well that we thought there was this transition from C2C to an e-commerce, from being a social network to being something else. And Wallapop is so much more than what it looks like. And this vision that we share, we were very excited because we could not only put money, but as well with our USP, what we believe that we can bring to Wallapop was something that Javier helped us immensely, because there's a lot of very strong assets. The fact that you have very strong cap table. Wallapop, without doubt, has the most prestigious cap table there is for sure in Spain. And this is something that is very important. It's very important for the rounds that you have to do now, particularly in the hiccup moment that we're in, because everyone helps, everyone adds. And for us to bring at this very last stage of these last rounds, or these last two rounds, the first one was in 15th of April 2021, and the second one was this December. But for us, what was really extraordinary is that we thought that we could really transition from this classified technology platform into what we believe this new Wallapop is, and do it with the leadership, because a lot of the companies, and in these moments where there are always volatilities, but this particular moment, to have someone with the leadership and the transition from a founder that had a style that was super successful at it, and how to transition it into is something that we thought it was an amazing moment, and hence our very large commitment. And we're very excited of what we're doing. We spend so much time talking and developing the Wallapop of the future with the technology transfer, with a lot of the add-ons that we bring as an investor. We bring, of course, money, but and I know that smart money is something that is probably too abused to my like, but we do, and we do bring quite a lot of things behind and a lot of support into the company. So there were many things, and we believe that these 10 years of Wallapop existing are been great, but we really see Wallapop going much further and wider and bigger, and with the help of the investors that we for sure it's going to be.
So I think you said it's all about choosing the right investors, and just as you mentioned, smart money is almost a mandatory ask for any entrepreneur. And one of the most valued assets to bring to the table are other investor interactions or partner interactions or advice. So moving again with that you just mentioned, particularly for Wallapop, Javier and Josep, how did you support the company in order to become the long-term partners that you are?
So I must say that Wallapop has like a special mission and energy that everybody around understands. The user, the shareholders, the team. So that's very important because everybody around has been willing to help the company in many different ways. And I think that's why Wallapop has grown so healthy in this last decade. So in my job, I think I did what I could at the first stages to prepare the company for hypergrowth. Mm-hmm. So the first 5 years were wild. So basically, we were a little startup, and suddenly we were opening in the US, in the UK, France. We had the biggest venture firms in the world investing around the board. So the company had to be prepared for hypergrowth, and that means hiring the correct teams, helping in governance, and also consolidating the culture of the company. So I think I did what I could around this first stage. And then it was curious because, I mean, as many companies, they have different stages. So after this wild growth stage, the company needed to move onto a more rational stage. Maybe the company needed more operator profile with lots of knowledge on how to create an economic model out of Wallapop. So that was a transition when I was also very happy to be able to help into this transition. So I got back into the board as an observer, and that's when Rob came. So I think the fit was great, but again, the company needed some help. So I guess I was like the local investor that helped the management team and the international investors into that transition before the last stage where Corelia came.
Josep.
This transition is something that, as I said in my previous comment about the value of the cap table and the investors. In our case, for us, what is exciting, and I insist on this point of the push and the support and the how the companies embrace our neighbor, the knowledge, the know-how of neighbor as a extremely successful technology company in Seoul, together with Lime in Japan with 300 million users in Asia, and being a search engine with later fintech, logistics, this concept of the super apps that we share this opportunity in Europe, and to bring all this know-how and these potential functionalities, support to a company with the vision and the way that the company is gone through a due diligence on the technology side for us prior to all of our investments and everything. This is something that for us was part of what we could see that could be the Wallapop of the future. So that for us that was a fundamental angle.
And we've seen that Naver joined the company as a strategic investor in the last round in order to support future strategy, right? So Rob, tell us a little bit about what's next in Wallapop. We just heard about your partnership with GLS, any new other partnerships, potential new markets, product launches, what are you up for?
Yeah, I think the future is going to be exciting for us. I mean, and it's a good time to talk about the future. We've spent the last month celebrating. I think we mentioned at the beginning that this is our 10-year anniversary, which is a really good time to reflect a little bit, thank people who have made that possible along the way, whether that's our great investors, whether it's the team, but most importantly the community, because ultimately Wallapop exists to empower a community, to create this new and more conscious and human way of consumption. And the exciting part is when you look forward, I would say, right now, about 7% of trade is circular. So not zero, but not huge. And so the industry, the peer-to-peer, this industry has existed for 20 years and gotten to 7%. But when we ask our community, and we every year we do a survey of Spaniards to ask about their attitudes towards sustainability, secondhand, etc., and really, really surprising insights are coming from this. So 60% of people in Spain say they want to buy more secondhand than firsthand over the next 3 years. And that's just a staggering figure. I mean, if you imagine what that means for kind of this revolution in commerce, and that number is increasing every year. So this has gone from where Wallapop started, we were really prodding people to trade secondhand. So we had to create that impetus, and we had to kind of make it cool. But now most people are telling us they want to trade more, and they see the value, they see the incredible cost savings, and they also see that this is something that's important for the planet. So the next 5 years, 10 years are going to be about going from that 7% to 50%. And that's going to be continuing to reduce friction, continuing to inspire more and more people to list things they don't need, continuing to extend our footprint, so growing kind of, we already have the largest selection of used goods in the markets that we operate, but continuing to grow that, continuing to make it so every time you want to make a purchase, you think secondhand first, and you think Wallapop first. And so that's going to be raising trust, improving selection, continuing to communicate the great value, extending our geographic footprint. So it's going to be across the board, making it so secondhand is first choice.
Great. So unfortunately, we're almost out of time. So I'm going to address this last question to the three of you. So we have an audience full of entrepreneurs looking for their upcoming fundraising round. And you just shared your amazing story about your own fundraising experience as investors and startups. So what would be your biggest recommendation to them?
So first, it's choose where you sit. So if you notice, I didn't sit between the investors, because then you have two people who can pound on you at the same time. No, seriously. I think it's really about that finding the right match, and there can be great. And when we've done all of our rounds, we've had opportunities to work with lots of great places and lots of great investment funds, world-class investment funds, and ultimately it comes down to fit. It comes down to, and that might not mean the most. It can mean. Picking the right one for you means finding the one that fits with your strategy, finding the one that fits with your team personally and and culturally. And I think it's really about over-indexing on that fit piece, because ultimately these are the partners you're going to have through good times, but also through challenging times. And so you want to make sure it does feel okay to sit in between them, and it's not going to be too painful during the difficult times.
So basically, my recommendation would be to try to build businesses that have a very timely objective. Rob was telling about sustainability, circularity, a lot of amazing tailwinds that are manifesting now for Wallapop, but that at the time we were somehow seeing that opportunity, not because we wanted to rotate second-hand goods, no, because rotating second-hand goods had a lot of benefits. And a lot of benefits that now we call them CO2, but before they had a lot of other ways of not interpreting it, but they were an amazing purpose and an amazing need. So the timing and the opportunity that you're trying to address, how you're going to address it, and as well to be very, very thorough about how ready and how good you are to implement that. And then try to have as good as possible partners in the journey, because everyone underestimates, and we do as an investor, but underestimate how long it takes to to go from a great idea to a success story, normally. 10 years here, and for sure many more together, but building something very, very meaningful and timely.
Great.
So I think we're running out of time, but not to repeat myself, I would suggest to solve a real problem, be really useful for your customers and users, and create around that mission a culture that would attract an excellent team and the correct investors.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time. It was amazing to moderate this panel and to hear all these amazing stories. I feel like we all are leaving here with lots of learnings. And if I have to choose one, it would be that investors or VCs, when chosen correctly, can bring much more than money to the table in order to support your portfolio companies as long-term partners. So thank you.
Thank you.